By now, many Springfield residents are well aware that there's a giant mural painted on one of the walls of the old Regent Theater in downtown Springfield. But if you're like me, you may have some questions as to what that painting is all about. Well, today I get the opportunity to talk with the person that created that great work and who designed it, artist Jason Morgan. Jason, thank you for being here and welcome. And I'm looking forward to talking to you about this wonderful community project. Let's talk a little bit about some of the logistics of doing a painting on that scale. Exactly how big is that wall anyway?
The building is 6 stories tall, so that's roughly 60 feet, and it's surprisingly it's 60 feet from side to side as well. So it's a 60-foot square.
When I paint a room in my house, let's say I'm painting my bedroom or living room, I'll go and throw some drop cloths down and I'll tape around windows and doors. But what kind of prep work is required for a project like this?
Well, there's quite a bit of prep work for the building, the wall itself. We had another organization here in town do that, a business, and they sealed all the cracks in the wall. They had to retuck point a lot of the brick, and then they put a gesso, which is a thick paste as a primer on the wall first.
From beginning to end, from the point at which the concept came into your mind and you started jotting things down on paper until the finished product, how long did that take? How big of a project was this?
Well, to do the actual work, the painting work, was about 6 to 7 months.
And I'm wondering, when you're up there on a lift, right in front of the wall, painting a finger, a hand, a face, an eyeball, and it's 2 or 3 feet across, how do you know that what you're painting is going to be in proper proportion to other parts of the mural that may be 30 feet over this way or 17 feet below you? It's not like you can step back and look at it all and see that it's right.
Well, that's correct. It is difficult to step back when you're on a lift 3 stories off the ground. So I basically have developed a way to, some people call it cheating, but I trace it. I use the image is digitized, and I use a projector and project it on the wall at night, and then outline basically the image that's projected on the wall.
Okay, let's get to the artwork itself. In a nutshell, what is this painting about?
This mural is mostly about the history of the Regent Theater and of Springfield. The theater, the history begins with Gus Sun. It shows his work and his life. And it shows the history of the agency that he developed or started, which is a talent agency. And then it progresses up through time when it became a movie theater from a vaudeville theater and dance theater, and up until probably the 50s or 60s when it transitioned over to the Checkers Brothers and became a Checkers Brothers theater.
Now, of course, the main character in the mural is Gus Sun. Why is he juggling balls?
In his youth, he became a juggler because his mother took in as a boarder in their house a man who was on the circuit of entertainers, and he taught him how to juggle.
When I look at this mural, there's of course the main character of Gus Sun is center stage, so to speak, but there's all these other characters and things going on. How much of that is from your own inspiration and creativity, or were there other sources that you drew upon for those images?
Most of it came from the research that I did on the theater. Gus Sun, the agency that he had, they developed a catalog essentially, and they had other promotional materials, and the catalog had the acts, photographs of the acts that he handled. And when I was looking through those papers, I just kept seeing all these great images of these people doing these things, these juggling and acrobats and things like that.
And I know from our previous discussion off camera, you mentioned that there was a story behind the scene of the orchestra there.
Oh, the orchestra came, well, the idea of the orchestra was, during the vaudeville days, they would always have a band or an orchestra down below the stage. And in the early movie era, they would also use an orchestra or a band to provide music for the silent movies. So I wanted to include a band or an orchestra, but I didn't have photo reference. So I walked across the street to the Cuss Auditorium and gathered some photographs from them of the current Springfield orchestra.
So those faces on the wall right now are current orchestra members?
They are, with some artistic liberties taken.
Well, it's just a marvelous mural, and it's a wonderfully interesting addition to the cityscape of Springfield. And thank you so much for doing it, and thank you for speaking with me today.
You're very welcome.
If you want to learn about a Gus Sun mural, you talk to the artist who painted it. But if you want to learn about Gus Sun himself, you come to the Heritage Center here in downtown Springfield and talk with Virginia Wygant. Virginia, thank you for having me today.
Thank you for coming. Glad to help you.
So, all right, we have this beautiful and fascinating mural that occupies an entire wall of the Regent Theater, and yet if I had to hazard a guess, I would say that probably most residents of Springfield know very little, if anything at all, about the main character that's featured on that painting. So let's start right there. Who was Gus Sun, anyway?
Well, Gus Sun was not a native Springfielder, but he was a native Ohioan. He was born in Toledo in 1868. He was one of 4 sons and 3 daughters born to German immigrants. And his family being poor, he left school very early and went to work for about 6 years as a machinist mechanic. Believe it or not, he was an apprentice mechanic at the local sewing machine company. But that didn't last that long. He actually then got fascinated with juggling.
So what is his connection with Springfield?
Well, that's very interesting. He and his brothers started a company called Sun Brothers Great United Shows and Traveling Animal Exhibitions, very typically Victorian with his huge long name. It was a circus, and it traveled around from about 1898 to 1918. And it went everywhere. Now, Gus Sun decided around 1892 that he wanted to forge out on his own, do his own thing, sold his interest in the circus to his brothers, and started his own traveling circus and troupe called the Gus Sun American Minstrels. And so they were traveling everywhere. Somewhere between 1898 and 1904, he found himself in California, in fact, in Hollywood. And he heard from a theater hand in one of the theaters he was in that there was some guy in town, Sid Grauman, who was coining money. Now, we would say he was making money hand over fist. So anyway, if that sounds familiar, Grauman's, yes, it was Grauman's Chinese Theater, same Sid. He went and talked to Sid and said, "What are you doing?" Well, as it turned out, Sid was booking silent movies and vaudeville performances in the same act. So Gus Sun got very curious, and in 1904 he decided to come to Springfield. He knew 2 things about Springfield. One is that we were a city of 40,000, so nice size, not too small, not too large. The other thing he knew was that we had only one opera house. Now, in those times, opera house meant live performance. And he figured with only one opera house, there was a good opportunity for him to bring in his act and his business. His very first theater, he actually leased. He had 114 kitchen chairs and 2 white sheets sewn together for the projection screen for the silent movie. And that's how he got started in Springfield.
Of course, we all love Springfield. Springfield's a wonderful town, but some might think it an unlikely place from which to launch a career of promoting big-name entertainers. So how important was Gus Sun nationally in this field?
Well, what we have to remember first is that he was first and foremost a theater owner. He, as soon as his first theater was popular, and it was very, very popular, then by 1906, so barely 2 years later, he decided to form his own booking company. It was called the Gus Sun Booking Agency. What it was kind of like a clearinghouse or a place where he could get a hold of vaudeville acts, or vaudeville acts could get a hold of him, and he could book them around the area. By 1920, there were 275 Gus Sun affiliated theaters around Ohio and Indiana, so he was an amazing theater owner. And at the same time, a booking agent who managed to book acts around the United States, nationally, internationally. At one time, he had the home office, of course, was here at the Regent Theater, which I think is why the Mural is so wonderful. But there were 11 other offices, one in London, one in Paris, and so he had access to all these vaudeville acts.
Could you tell us about some of the celebrities whose careers he helped advance?
Consider vaudeville agent or vaudeville shows, silent screen stars, and talking, or talkies, in other words, movies with sound. It covers that whole spectrum of entertainers and begins with someone as illustrious as Bob Hope.
Wow.
Yes, and he himself said, that's where I got my start, in what was fondly called sun time. It wasn't small time entertainment, it was sun time entertainment. So he got his start here, so did the Marx Brothers, which credit Gus Sun for giving them an opportunity to have their first professional vaudeville act. It was George Burns and Grace Allen, W.C. Fields, Al Jolson. It was an amazing number of people, including then local people like the team of Clark and McCullough. All got their start here on what was called Sun Time.
Well, it's almost a who's who of early and mid-20th century entertainers, isn't it?
It really is. It's an amazing to think that so many of them came here, had their start, and then launched themselves into these amazing careers.
Gus Sun was something of an innovator in terms of how he booked acts. Could you explain that a little bit to our viewers?
Yes, he did some interesting things while booking for these vaudeville acts. It's easy, and it was easy when vaudeville was just beginning, and Gus could contact all of his friends in the circus or in the juggling community or even in the Indian medicine show community. He did a little bit of that for a while, too. But as it started to grow, it got harder and harder to find good acts, get them scheduled quickly, get them in and get them out. So that's one of the reasons he started his booking agency. So what he did was put advertisements into the professional journals, advertising that he was a booking agent, that he would book these vaudeville acts. And so he would book them what was called on a wire, which means you send him a telegram or send him a wire. He would book the book without any audition, and you could get started. And to keep audiences fresh so that they wouldn't all sit there forever mesmerized by the silent movie, which was just fascinating, he got what was called a chase act. And if that sounds suspicious, yes, it was just exactly that. It was to chase the audience out so that the paying customers could come in and see the performance. So he had some very clever things to keep things moving along and keep it fresh. Gus Sun himself said in his 50th anniversary commemorative, the News Sun in 1939 did a 50th anniversary supplement. And they interviewed him, did a lot of wonderful old pictures. And he said, yes, the talkies, or in other words, movies with sound, really hurt vaudeville because a lot of these vaudeville stars immediately got into talking movies. But if you think about what person, rather than a company, what individual made Springfield known, without a doubt, Gus Sun was the one who made people know about Springfield, and Springfield made known to the world.
Fascinating information. Virginia Wygant, thank you so much for inviting us into the Heritage Center and for giving us the story behind the man on the wall. Signing off for the Springfield 5 Government Access Channel, I'm Peter Wallace. See you next time.